So today, we're diving into something really fascinating. This huge paradox that's right at the heart of the Arab world. This idea of being exiled in time. We're going to be drawing from the work of Brahim Salem to really unpack what it means to be staring down the barrel of the fifth industrial revolution while, still grappling with the ghosts of the past.
And, to set the stage, there's this incredible line from the poet Mahmoud Darwish. He wrote, "And we shall flee from an age for which our apprehensions are yet unripe." Wow. I mean, that one haunting line just perfectly nails the challenge we're about to get into.
All right, so let's get right to it. What is this paradox we're talking about? Well, it's this really jarring contradiction. You've got societies that are filled with the absolute latest tech, yet they're operating with social structures and ways of thinking that feel like they're from a totally different pre-industrial era.
And this is where you really see the clash, right? On one side, you've got the tools of the future. We're talking artificial intelligence, quantum computation, biotechnology, the whole shebang. But on the other side, the rules of society are often still running on things like tribal hierarchies, absolute dogmatic certainty, and clerical authority. It's like having a brand new, superpowered computer, but you're forced to run it on ancient, outdated software. It just doesn't compute. Okay, so you're probably asking, how is that even possible? Well, it really boils down to this key idea called consumption modernity. Think of it like this. It's when a society adopts all the symbols of technology, the shiniest new smartphone, the latest AI app, but doesn't actually internalize the way of thinking that made those things possible in the first place. That rational, empirical, questioning mindset. It's like enjoying the fruit but having absolutely no idea how the tree even grew. So that's the what. We've defined the problem, but the real question is why. Why does this paradox even exist? To figure that out, we have to look at the very foundations of education and intellectual culture.
And this leads us to an absolutely brilliant idea from the physicist Richard Feynman. He called it cargo cult science. Now picture this. It's like people are perfectly mimicking the rituals of science. They're building the fancy labs, they're running the experiments, but they're missing the most important part. They're missing that core spirit of real inquiry, of skepticism, of being willing to say, hey, maybe I'm wrong. It's all the form of science, but with none of its soul. And the result of this kind of educational model? It's huge. What you get are students who've mastered the grammar of science. They can recite all the facts, they know the formulas by heart, but they never really learn its logic. They can give you the right answers on a test, but they can't ask the tough, challenging questions that actually lead to new discoveries.
And this really gets to the absolute heart of it. Right now, the focus is so often on what to think. It's about reinforcing identity, defending the beliefs you already have. But the shift that's desperately needed is a move towards teaching how to think, fostering that sense of inquiry, that healthy skepticism, and that relentless drive to discover the truth, even if it's not what you wanted to find.
Now, look, if this were just a simple problem of catching up, that'd be one thing. But the fifth industrial revolution, it completely changes the game. It takes this internal problem and blows it up into a brand new and, honestly, a much more urgent external threat.
Because the very nature of power itself has fundamentally changed. We're not talking about steam engines or electrical grids anymore. No way. Today, the real engines of power and influence are things like data architectures and machine learning models. Power has become the ability to literally write the code that defines reality.
And when you look at it this way, you start to see this really terrifying ladder of dependency. It started out pretty simply, importing physical machines. Then it got a little more abstract, importing software. But the final step, the one we're at now, is the most profound. It's importing meaning itself. It's when you start to see your own reality through algorithms that were coded somewhere else, by people with totally different values, totally different goals.
And this brings us to a really deep condition, something called epistemic alienation. It's this strange, unsettling feeling of living in a world where the basic rules, the stories you're told, even your sense of what's true, it's all being written and controlled by outside forces. You're no longer the author of your own story, of your own understanding.
And this dependency, this alienation, it turns into a full-blown existential crisis in our age of AI and synthetic media. Because what happens when the very fabric of reality can be convincingly, perfectly faked?
No, really, just stop and think about this for a second. What if truth is no longer something we go out and discover with our own eyes and our own reason, but instead it's something that is designed, rendered, packaged, and pushed out to us to be as believable as possible? That is the massive challenge of the deepfake era.
This is what's being called the deepfake condition. And it's so much more than just a tech problem, right? It's a metaphysical crisis. It's a point where these super convincing simulations start to win out over our actual lived experiences, and the very foundation of how we know what's real begins to crumble.
And this all points to the ultimate danger. It's not just about being left behind economically. It's about something called ontological obsolescence. That's a fancy term, but what it means is terrifying. It's the risk of being present in the future, but only as a passive consumer of realities that others have created for you, never as an active participant in building that future yourself. Wow, I know that is a really stark diagnosis, but the analysis here doesn't just leave us in despair. It actually pivots. It offers a path forward, a vision for how to forge a kind of neo-renaissance.
So, where do we start? The solution really begins with one fundamental shift in mindset. It's about moving away from being a society that just imports the finished products of modernity to becoming one that actively produces the knowledge that creates it in the first place.
And this whole strategy is built on a really powerful triad of ideas. First, you need science. Science restores the method, the how of inquiry. Second, you need philosophy to restore a sense of meaning and purpose, the why. And finally, you need art to restore our imagination, the ability to dream up what's next. You absolutely need all three.
And look, the ultimate goal here isn't to just create a carbon copy of the West. Not at all. It's about forging a unique kind of modernity, one that's both rational and deeply humane, that's incredibly technological but also poetic. It's about building a future that reflects its own values while still engaging with the world on its own terms.
And that brings us full circle, right back to where we started. That line from Mahmoud Darwish, "And we shall flee from an age for which our apprehensions are yet unripe." You know, after everything we've just talked about, that line hits a little different, doesn't it? It's not just a beautiful, poetic warning anymore. It feels like an urgent call to action, a call to wake up those apprehensions, to get the intellectual and cultural ground ready for what's already knocking at the door.
And so we're left with this one last really powerful question. The future is here. It's not coming. It's already begun. The fifth industrial revolution is happening right now. The real question for the Arab world, and maybe, just maybe for all of us, is this. Is it too late to truly arrive? Not just as users, but as the architects of whatever comes next. That's definitely something worth thinking about.